On different roads we wait, under the same white sky. You light your prayer in one room, I whisper mine nearby. Some raise a flag, some kneel and fold their hands, but in the morning light we all still make our plans to feed a child, to keep the door held open, to tell the truth when the easy lie is spoken, and when the world grows loud and fear gets dressed as law. I look beneath the names to what we came here for. Many paths, one light, one human heart. Many paths, one light, not as far apart. We wanna do what's right. We wanna heal what breaks. Many paths, one light, that's the bond we make. Many paths, one light.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Rappahannock. All are welcome here. My name is Molly, and I'll be your service leader. Our speaker today is David Rowden. David and his wife Marge are members of UUFR and also attend a monthly Quaker meeting. Now some words from Michel Legrave. We come to this religious community from many paths and diverse needs. If you have come here seeking comfort, may your pain be soothed. If you have come here looking for answers, may you find new questions. If you have come here seeking purpose, may you be called awakened. If you have come here hoping to build a new way, may the path be open before you. You may probably have heard Marley speak of one light, many windows. Wisdom and spirit as light can enter through many windows of faith. We all seek the same light, whatever you may call it, however you practice your beliefs. Today, our speaker will examine 12 principles for leading a moral and ethical life shared by religious and philosophic traditions. As religions and politics have become more and more extreme and divisive, we seem to focus on differences, yet we all seek a good and productive life. Today, Dave will focus on the values we share and are much more important than our differences. Like varied rivers rushing towards a single vast ocean, the world's faiths flow from the same deep well of human longing, yet they carve vastly different channels through the earth. In their similarities, they speak the universal language of every soul. Every tradition acts as a compass pointing toward a shared moral north, universally commanding humanity to love your neighbors and shield the vulnerable. Whether kneeling on woven rugs, standing before candlelit altars, or sitting in silent meditation, all humans' worship shares a rhythmic pulse, a collective reach for meaning amidst the fleeting natures of time. Each faith weaves a sacred safety net of community, gathering wandering souls into holy sanctuaries to face the great mysteries of birth and suffering and death together. Yet in their differences, these paths paint the divine in a starkly beautiful, contrasting colors. The Abrahamic faith look toward a single commanding voice of one sovereign God who carves history with holy text and promises an eternal afterlife of heaven or hell. Across the mountains, the dharmic conditions look inward and outward at an endless web of existence, seeing the divine not as a distant monarch, but as a cosmic breath flowing through all things. For them, life is an ancient turning wheel of rebirth, where salvation is not a celestial city, but the quiet extinguishing of desire into the stillness of nirvana. When we first joined the Coffee and Conversation group, which is our UUFR gathering at the local coffee shop in Irvington, it was like joining a conversation that had been going on for hours without us. Dave's breadth of knowledge was immediately obvious. For a time we said little. Dave is very much a modern Renaissance man. And the way you get to be a Renaissance man or woman is by being curious. And David has always been ready to explore new things. I will not try and mention all the adventures that describe Dave's career. For now, I will summarize some highlights. Dave has been a medical behaviorist, professor at the University of Texas Medical Branch, was given a fellowship in the Department of Preventive and Social Medicine, rewarded by Harvard University Medical School, and has held various consulting positions for companies in the DC area. By the time Dave was in his last position of his career at Caliber Associates, and by their words, they are a select group of highly experienced search professionals and biopharmaceutical executives of the life science. Dave was appointed Chief Knowledge Officer. Think about that for a minute. Chief Knowledge Officer. That's rather like giving a Betty Crocker Award for Lifetime Baking Innovation and Excellence. I believe that Dave could reason his way out of Schrodinger's box and emerge with a very live cat. Dave adheres to the Stoic principles of courage, justice, and temperance, and seeks to live his life according to the Zoroastrian mantra, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Dave and Marge are sailing enthusiasts and owner of a vicious pit bull named Muffin. With great pleasure, I welcome Dave Rowden to the microphone.
A couple of things. First, I'd like to clarify that, according to Tom, our talk appeared on the obituary page. And I'm not dead yet. And the other thing, just a clarification, the Chief Knowledge Officer's job is to maximize communication across different divisions who have different technical expertise. So basically, that's a translator. It's not the source of all knowledge in consulting. And first, I'd like to say that I did not have the, when I was asked to speak, I did not actually have a talk. The only thing I had was the two-page handout you have in front of you. So I'm not going to be talking about all the detail that's in there. It's there for your edification in later reference. You don't need to follow it during this presentation. The only point from it that matters for today is this. The table contains 144 examples of shared ethical value examples across 12 religions and philosophical traditions. This is not a trivial overlap. It's a substantial pattern, which I believe Molly was referring to in her reading. I generated that table with the assistance of an AI-supported research tool. I began with a simple question. Are there common principles across the 12 traditions? I expected to find perhaps 3 or 4 broad areas. Instead, I found 12. That surprised me. The traditions all differed deeply in history, theology, metaphysics, sacred texts, ritual life, and social organization. They make very different claims on a variety of issues, ranging from God to the nature of reality. Yet here we have 12 common similarities about how we should live our lives. That raises a very old and very difficult question. If religions and philosophies share so many moral principles, why have their followers so often participated in coercion, exclusion, cruelty, and violence against the people who affirm many of the same ethical values? That's the puzzle, and that's what I want to address. There is more agreement about how human beings ought to treat one another, yet disagreements about truth, reality repeatedly override those shared moral commitments. Worse, they're often used to justify violating the very ethics that the tradition holds. My thesis is simple. Differences are not the problem. It is the absolutism of truth. Traditions disagree honestly and profoundly. That's normal. But conflict arises when claims about reality and truth become unquestionable, when they cannot be examined, corrected, or challenged, and especially when they become fused with social or political power. First, I want to define the three fundamental questions that underlie both religion and philosophy. And I'll be using the classic categories of Greek philosophy. Second, I will recast those same questions from a religious point of view using the transcendent language of the good, the true, and the beautiful. There are three fundamental questions common to religion and philosophy. The first is, what is ultimately real? This is the question of metaphysics. Is there a God? Is reality one or many? Is the universe material, spiritual? These are not small questions. They shape how we understand who they are and their place in the universe. Second, how do we know what is true? This is the question of epistemology. We do know through scripture, reason, science, experience, intuition, or some combination. Even the people who agree on ethical principles may disagree profoundly about why those principles are true and how you know they're true. Third, what is valuable? This is the question of axiology. Axiology includes ethics, which asks what is good, right, just, and worth doing. It also includes aesthetics, which asks what is beautiful, worthy of reverence, and capable of evoking awe and gratitude or wonder. Every religion and every philosophy makes claims in all three of these areas. The critical point is, traditions often find their strongest overlap in axiology, especially ethics, but their sharpest disagreements often arise in metaphysics and epistemology. The problem arises when one answer is treated not as a serious conviction, but as an eternal truth. Now I want to take a look at the transcendent language I talked about, the good, the true, and the beautiful. It is a result of Thomas Aquinas' efforts to merge Aristotelian virtue ethics with medieval Christian morality. As I said, there are three of them: the good, the true, and the beautiful. These terms are useful because they bridge the boundaries within and across religion and philosophy. Ethical convergence concerns primarily the good. Deep disagreement is often found in the true. Both humility and manipulation can be amplified through the beautiful. The good is the ethical dimension of life. It asks the most practical of all questions: how should we live our lives? Across traditions, we repeatedly find injunctions such as treat each others fairly, tell the truth, protect the vulnerable. Different justifications of why do not prevent similar moral outcomes. This is important because ethical cooperation does not require metaphysical agreement. A Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a Hindu, a Buddhist, a humanist, a Stoic, an indigenous practitioner, an atheist, and a secular liberal may disagree profoundly about God, salvation, revelation, liberation, the soul, and the nature of self. Nevertheless, they can agree that torturing the innocent is wrong, that children should be protected, that honesty matters, that cruelty requires justification, if it can ever be justified at all. The true concerns what is real and what can we honestly claim to know. Here, the differences among the traditions are often sharp and they can be contentious. Some affirm a personal God, others do not. Some affirm multiple divine beings or spiritual powers. Others insist upon a radical unity of Spinoza's God, where God is the universe. Some describe ultimate reality through emptiness, impermanence, interdependence, or liberation from attachment. Others understand reality in terms of creation, providence, or divine purpose. I'd like to briefly say at this point, Molly's reading hit all this very clearly. It was almost like I didn't have to give this. Some ground reality in matter alone. Others insist that matter is not all that exists. Traditions also differ concerning authority. Is scripture final? Is reason final? Is scientific evidence final? Is your conscience the final arbiter? These differences by themselves are not a danger. In a plural world, we always contain rival truth claims. The danger begins when the source of our convictions lose humility. There are broadly two ways to hold a truth claim. The first is a serious and self-aware. It includes commitment, but also self-scrutiny. It accepts that one be mistaken in part, have limited understanding, be influenced by culture, or blind to the evidence that others can see. The second way is absolutism. It claims final certainty, resists correction, excludes challenge and dissent. This latter view is the source of major problem. When we conclude that because we possess final truths, our beliefs justify the right, if not the obligation, to force everyone else to believe as we do. You can consider that by definition of proselytizing. In a sense, this truth becomes weaponized, and once truth becomes a weapon, beauty often becomes its accomplice. The beautiful is more than art, literature, and poetry. It is harmony, reverence, awe, gratitude, wholeness, and the perception that life exceeds the isolated ego. Beauty can appear in a hymn, in a Quaker silence, in a Buddhist meditation, in a cathedral or a temple, or even in a ritual meal. At its best, beauty humbles us and reminds us that reality exceeds our expectations. It weakens arrogance. It interrupts self-absorption. It enlarges wonder. Beauty can therefore serve the good. It can make compassion more imaginable, gratitude more natural, and humility more durable. But beauty also has a shadow side. The danger is not in beauty itself. The danger is when it becomes detached from truthfulness and compassion. A political movement can create stirring music, art, literature, beautiful architecture, but all in the service of demanding conformity, silencing dissent, or scapegoating outsiders. Beauty can elevate the soul, but it can also contribute to undermining our judgment. There is a place where danger begins. Claims about the good usually begin in concrete realities. These claims are practical, relational, and have consequences. Claims about the ultimate reality operate differently. Once a group believes it alone possesses the final access to truth, coercion becomes easier to justify because the coercer imagines that what being defended is not merely an opinion, but reality itself. It is not the strength of the conviction that is the problem. It is the belief that the conviction is absolute. As I said earlier, a person who believes my conviction is the truth, you must accept it. It's my duty to make you accept it, has crossed into something dangerous. They believe they are entitled to do to others what they would not have done to themselves. Worst of all, absolute certainty disables correction. Those who believe they cannot be wrong no longer think they need self-examination. That is why the central danger is not religion as such or philosophy as such. The danger is absolute certainty, the siren's call to those who feel unworthy, anxious, and afraid. The authors Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Erich Fromm, Eric Hoffer, and Timothy Snyder have all warned us about the seduction of an easy path to giving up our freedom. It allows us to live in a world in which there are no moral consequences. All of these authors describe different paths to giving up our freedom to authoritarianism. They described it at different periods, ranging from the 1930s to today. The one constant is the desire for certainty when we find ourselves in a period of rapid cultural, social, and economic change, coupled with personal anxiety and fear, and a sense of our own lack of worth. We are seduced by the moral and intellectual certainties that make submission to evil possible. There are three phases in this downward spiral. First, collective power becomes morally intoxicating. A leader, a nation, movement, religion, or ideology is presented as uniquely righteous, uniquely redemptive, or uniquely entitled to avenge historical wrongs. It offers identity, belonging, certainty, and a sense of historical mission. Second, independent judgment is surrendered. Slogans replace thought. Loyalty replaces evidence. Repetition replaces reflection. Authority replaces critical thinking. Third, outsiders are dehumanized. Those outside the circle are described as impure, dangerous, corrupt, ignorant, and unworthy of any moral concern. Once this happens, the ethical principles the group may still claim to honor have been suspended, though the believers may not even notice it. Because compassion is reserved for the insiders, justice becomes revenge, truth becomes propaganda, and beauty becomes a spectacle. The danger then is not in faith itself. It is the fusion of certainty, power, and obedience without conscience. A healthy religious or philosophical traditions has mechanisms of self-correction. Humility is the biggest one. Then there is interpretation, introspection, accountable leadership, and openness to evidence. When those mechanisms disappear, a tradition becomes vulnerable to domination from within. There is a second danger, and it does not require a mass movement. It exists within each of us. The simple fact is, human beings are poor judges of their own competence. This is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. The basic insight is that people with limited knowledge or skill in an area overestimate their competence. The same limitations that produce the overestimate also limit the person's ability to recognize the error, especially in relation to others. When college students were given tests on humor, logic, and literature, those students who scored in the 12th percentile believed they had scored in the 64th percentile. Oddly, those students who scored in the 92nd percentile underestimated their performance, though not to the same degree. This research has been replicated hundreds of times with subjects across a wide range of disciplines and experience. The takeaway, as I said, is we are all subject to the Dunning-Kruger effect. The relevance is not merely psychological, it is moral and intellectual. A person may listen to a few arguments about historical claims, read an article or two, listen to a handful of podcasts, or stream a few videos, then mistake this exposure for a high level of personal expertise. This happens in religion, politics, science, history, medicine, and philosophy. It happens in every domain where complex questions are present. Confirmation bias only intensifies the problem. We're more likely to notice what confirms our existing view than what challenges it. We seek information, media sources, and communities that reassure us that we were right all along. In an age of rapid, high-volume information, especially in social media, where we are encouraged to react quickly to a never-ending barrage of opinion, information that is incomplete or simply wrong. We're given little time to reflect, compare sources, examine a context, or ask whether we understand an argument as well enough to even accept or reject it. This is what I call a culture of accelerated certainty without foundation. We are convinced before we have learned. We judge before we have listened. We condemn before we understand. The takeaway is simple. All of us are capable of being very confidently wrong. So what to do? First of all, don't adopt relativism, certainly not nihilism. The alternative is responsible conviction. Responsible conviction means holding beliefs firmly enough to guide one's life, but humbly enough to remain open to correction, evidence, dialogue, and conscience. It means seeking the true through intellectual honesty, evidence, dialogue, and the courage to admit error. It means the beautiful can be accessed through reverence, gratitude, silence, art, and nature. The most difficult thing to do is to hold on to the good. When the claim we are examining also includes values or beliefs we share, but has other claims within that we find morally reprehensible, what do? We must practice disciplined introspection. We become dangerous to others and opaque to ourselves if we don't. We must ask, what evidence would make me reconsider? Whose experience am I refusing to hear? Have I confused loyalty with truth? Am I applying my moral principles consistently or only to the people who agree with me? Does my certainty make me more compassionate, or does it limit my compassion? Uncertainty opens the way to learning, growth, dialogue, and moral correction. Absolute certainty closes that door. The fact that there are 12 common principles for ethical behavior that can be found in numerous philosophical and religious traditions doesn't mean that all religions and philosophies are paths to the same ultimate truths. They're not. But this does show something important. People who disagree profoundly about the ultimate questions can still recognize compassion, justice, dignity, truthfulness as genuine goods. If this is true, then perhaps we can move beyond mere toleration of differences towards a principled and humane, unconditional acceptance of those differences. This is not accepting that says all beliefs are equal and true, but an acceptance grounded in a recognition that people divided by doctrine may still be capable of moral insight, moral growth, and moral cooperation. An acceptance that is unconditional, not merely tolerant of differences. An acceptance based on knowledge that none of us really know ourselves, much less anyone else. Rabbi Hillel expressed this idea with unmatched economy. What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the whole of the Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and learn. That final phrase is important, go and learn, because it is both an ethical command and a call to an intellectual discipline. It asks us to act with compassion, seek truth and humility, and remain teachable, in a world where certainty is easy, but wisdom is hard.
There was so much content to that. My brain is still kind of trying to absorb it. But one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about the danger of absolute certainty is that we want our leaders to have a certain degree of certainty or some degree of certainty. Otherwise, why are we for them? You know, where are they taking us? But obviously there's danger in that. If someone got up on the floor of the Senate and said, we need to attack Iran, but I'm only 51% certain about that, which may be the reality, then nobody's going to listen to them. So there is a natural tendency for leaders to be, I think, more certain than they really are. So that I think you were getting at when you talked about responsible conviction. But tell me what you think about that. How to solve that problem.
That is the equivalent of responsible conviction. There's a difference between, as you pointed out, communication to an audience you're trying to convince about something and what you actually believe. The problem is when there isn't a difference. And I don't have to talk very long about that. Our president is absolutely certain of everything, and he's never wrong. And therein is a problem.
Right.
Are there any real estate developers here among us? Because real estate developers display absolute confidence that this is going to be wonderful. And their confidence persuades a lot of people. Though, I mean, maybe they're 100% confident, maybe they're not, but that confidence, it kind of works, you know, in terms of that kind of development. I'm not a developer, by the way.
One thing to remember about things like developers and their absolute confidence, it may actually be true because they really haven't thought through what the actual impacts are going to be. The problem is when they have thought it through and do that anyway.
Good talk. Thank you, David. We have a tendency, I think, to always look at the other guy, and it pays to look at our own group sometimes. You mentioned sloganeering. We are really good at sloganeering. But there is sometimes very little depth in those slogans. We need to look more carefully at that.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. If there's one message I really wanted to get across, which I might not have, they are not the problem, you are the problem. You need to look at yourself because we are confident in our convictions.
There's a Buddhist nun by the name of Pema Chodron who says that the only thing that is certain is uncertainty. And I think learning to be comfortable in that space is one of the greatest challenges that I think we have to meet, each one of us individually. And certainty is very seductive. We feel comfortable and cozy in that mind space, but that's all it is.
There's also, I can't now remember if I even covered it, but when you're in times of social upheaval, social change, technological change, anxiety and your own self-worth become questioned. And when that happens, you become really vulnerable to somebody who has a certain solution. You know, so we are in a time right now, there's been other times like it, where all of that is true. Social, cultural, economic change, technological change, political change is all going on at an accelerated rate with little thought being given to it because we're totally distracted by social media. You know, so it's difficult to live in a situation of uncertainty. You have to be safe in your own conception of yourself, because the risk that people feel is they're losing their conception of their self. So I agree with you, and I imagine this group is probably more inclined to be comfortable in uncertainty than a lot of other groups are.
I'm Keith Argo, relatively new to this congregation, Keith and Lou. I want you to hold this up and take a quick image before your eyes. Take a look at these 144 truths, or whatever things being. They're clean, they're to a point. They can be discussed, but not argued with. Now, in your mind, run down through each one of these 12 different denominations here. And every one of those could describe Unitarianism. If in doubt, look at the 13th one. It's Unitarianism. So it's the only time that I see here, God is only mentioned 4 times, and did not happen to be mentioned in ours. But in Unitarian, God is as we understand him, her, or it. This is just a remarkable, shows to me the diversity and the strength of the Unitarian concepts. And as we look out at this wonderful forest that we're right within, remember, nature abhors a vacuum and always fills it with something. So does Unitarianism. Fill it with something.
Thank you.
Your talk reminds me of the time I was looking to restock our bumper stickers that we put out there for people to put on their car about UU. And I was reading all the normal ones about love and all those kind of things. And there was one that struck me that says, Unitarian Universalism, we have questions for your answers.
I like both of these comments as well as others, and David, thank you for doing this. Picking up precisely what Keith articulated, and in your presentation, I was just thinking, what a great day to be a Unitarian Universalist, because it seemed that as you were throwing out in detail where we have moved as a group, or where people move when they're not on a cutting edge, but they're on a razor that is cutting them up. That if you look on this column of Universal Unitarian, not only is it safe, it feels an enlightened and a well-respected environment to lock your path into. And so I thank you for doing all this and showing that it's not exclusive. If I was in the ancient Greek philosophy, or if I was Judaism, or if I was Native American, I may come away from everything you said as I was trying to slice it with the same spirit of oneness and togetherness, but I'm not certain, and I really do feel it inside the contents of our congregation and our tenets. And thank you very much for both using AI and yourself.
I said I used AI in case there was anyone who wanted to get up and leave.
The reading today was also AI.
Thank you, David. I really look forward to this, and you did not disappoint me. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. This morning I had a conversation with my brother, who I love here, who is a very smart guy. But my brother is very, very devout Christian, no doubt about it. And when I mentioned what we were discussing this morning, I said, you know, the 12, he said, oh, faith has got to be one of them. I said, no, it's not. Does it have to be? And when I looked at your first page, which was all religion, I thought, oh crap, he's right. They're all about faith. You know? The religions are essentially all about faith. But I got to the second page and I was hardened. And I only see faith. I saw it mentioned once, and it's on the second page. I can't find it again. But it seems to me faith is certainty. That it can't be refuted, it can't be challenged because it's faith. You got it or you don't. And I think therein lies a difficulty in having discussions with anybody about religion at all. We have to kind of put it aside. Okay, let's put the faith aside. Let's talk about these things here. This is what really gives me a useful tool. Thank you.
Yeah. One thing about that is if you talk about those 12 principles, is there anything wrong with them being based on faith?
No, as long as it's not exclusive.
Yeah. Well, I would say all those groups, Jews for sure, because they are the chosen people, what they believe faith-wise is faith, and it's certain. You know, the only time you run into uncertainty is in philosophy, Unitarian Universalism, and Quakerism. You know, I mean, that's unfortunate, but it's true. You also have it with humanists and atheists. And as a little aside, if you want to know who knows more about religion than somebody who's religious, ask an atheist. They actually do know more about religion.
Do we have any more?
On this last point that Tom made, I think you could have faith in these 12 principles.
Yeah.
And I find it comforting that people who have radically different views of reality come out more or less the same on these 12 principles. I think that was one of your key points. I find that a sort of a encouraging thing about humanity.
Well, when we talk about we're all really the same, that's the definition of really the same. You know, whatever your faith is, that doesn't change how you want to get along with everybody else. It doesn't change who you want to help, what you want to help. I mean, it can, but that's when faith gets in the way of the principles.